Hi, this is Robert Jackson. I wanted to take an opportunity as we're looking at the new year, the fresh year coming up, to review a little bit of the philosophy of QSI, of the philosophy of our school, which is mastery and reteaching, or correctives. So this is the model we've probably seen before. It's been around in QSI for quite some time. It's now being used, similar models are being used with people like Tom Gusky or other stern believers in mastery learning, and an approach that allows students to have a second chance at relearning information. So let's just take a look and see how it works for us. Students start the year with a first unit. As you are teaching that unit, along the way, there will be some sort of formative assessments. Generally, as educators, we know where students are at, even as we're doing those daily assessments here in Unit 1. But let's say there's a formative assessment that you would give, and a reminder that many times we think of things like an end of the unit test as a summative assessment, but in reality, that's formative. We really want to know how students are doing. Because we're leaving time at the end of the unit and not starting the second unit right at the end of Unit 1, we're calling that a formative assessment. So what will happen is students will fall into two different categories. Either they have mastered the material and they're going to go on to enrichment, challenge, and extension, or they're going to need a time of reteaching and corrective instruction. So let's have a look at that. Then we're going to bounce around this chart a little bit, talk about these areas. So reteaching and corrective instruction is not more of the same. I think one of the more serious critiques of mastery learning is a student, especially in middle school and secondary, will not master a subject, they will not understand something, and a teacher says, here is a packet of paper, or look in the book to find out more information about this, or here is a section from an online assignment, you just read this. Basically, what we're saying to students then is the same thing we did before, I want you to do again, but this time on your own. And that is not very effective, not very effective at all. And so when we look at reteaching and corrective instruction, this is an opportunity to use different strategies. There are things we possibly did as a whole group, and we want to maybe readdress those. It's possible the student was gone. We want to look at those, but this is a time where we're also going to engage different strategies and figure out what is going to help the student to master that material. And again, I will say very rarely is it handing them a stack of papers or telling them to go read it in the book. They're going to need a personal coach. They're going to need someone to help them and guide them through this process. Now, can there be a student tutor? Sure. We can bring students in, we can bring paraprofessionals in, we can bring assistant teachers in, we ourselves can be brought in to do these things, but I believe it really must have a personal touch. Leaving students who are not doing well in a certain subject on their own to figure it out is not a recipe for success. We need someone to make sure that they're there, and that's why we have the model of the personal coach. Sitting down one-on-one for 5-10 minutes every day is going to make a world of difference. It does not have to be 2 or 3 hours once a month. So especially as you're doing those formative assessments in class and you see a student is not quite clicking, spend that extra time with the student then. So assessment on non-mastered areas only. I think this is important. I remember when I was a kid, the Super Mario Brothers video game came out, and everyone was very excited. It was a very fun game. But the thing I didn't like about it is that if I were to spend all of my lives in the game, I would basically have to go back to the beginning and start over. And so I never got to the end where I actually got to finish the game because I always had to start over and I always had to do this perfect run in order to get to the final princess and save her. And that was frustrating. I got very good at those opening screens. I got to where I could go through quite a bit, but every time I died, 15, 20 minutes into the game, I had to go back and start over. Now what we're seeing is a lot of this sort of video game with the Super Mario Odyssey. My son has this, and he was playing, and I noticed there was a resume button on there. A resume, which means I'm going to pick up where I left off. There's an area I haven't finished yet. I'm working on it. That's where I'm going to go. It is a more surgical understanding to how to be successful in a video game. And I think as we're looking at what students are able to do educationally, and these are examples taken from the algebra curriculum of what students are able to do and what they're not able to do. If we were to give a formative assessment and let's say a student did these 4 things, they mastered it, they demonstrated that, you know that they understand it because during the class period, they were also demonstrating that mastery even before you gave that formative assessment. But there's a couple of areas that need some work. Thinking back, we don't want them to start over and do everything again. There's no point. We want them to resume, to pick up where they left off. So really what we want to focus on during this time of reteaching, during this time of personal coaching, is not all of these things, but specifically surgically looking at these 2 areas. Okay, we want to classify special systems of linear equations and solve systems of linear equations. And I think that those are the areas that a student may need some help on. Are there times where we're going to bring in this other information? Yes. But as a formative assessment, we're really only going to look at these 2 things. Instead of giving them a fresh test which has everything on it again, there's just no point. Let's only focus on those areas that we've retaught. So looking at this, we have this time of formative assessments. We have the 2 groups that are moving either way. One group is going to enrichment, challenge, and extension. The other group is going to reteaching and corrective instruction. So they had then that group gets a second formative assessment. I think at that point, you're going to know whether or not this is something that they're going to be able to do right away, because that reteaching is going to be so one-on-one based, and you're going to understand what they need. And once they get here, they should be able then to move on to Unit 2. But let's talk about this enrichment, challenge, and extension. This is an opportunity for students not, again, to be handed a packet of work. So looking at these kids who have finished this formative assessment, they've done well, they've demonstrated mastery. This is a time of serious challenge for those students. It is not a time to hand them a stack of work and say, you're on your own. Students here will definitely need a challenge. And thankfully, a lot of the curriculum that we have nowadays, a lot of the books and whatnot, has challenge material and extension material for students who may want to go a little deeper in what they're understanding in the classroom. So whatever the unit would be, thinking ahead as far as what that student can do for a day or 2 after you've given that first formative assessment here, while you're working here in this reteaching and corrective instruction and figuring out this other formative assessment, what can these students be doing that is not busy work? We want to avoid busy work at all costs and really get them involved deeper into the subject. If you have an assistant teacher or a paraprofessional in the class, this may be something that they're helping to plan and lead for the students. It could be they're doing some extra experiments in science. It could mean any number of things. If they are working on a writing assignment, possibly bringing in a publishing aspect to that, or a portfolio aspect of that would be something very exciting. But we want this to be something that is beyond the normal work. We want them to feel that they are being challenged, and the parents will see that challenge as well. Because I think one of the critiques we often have is there's not enough challenging work. And bringing this in and labeling it enrichment time, challenge material, something advanced, is going to be very important in your classrooms. So that's what we want. We want that enrichment and challenge time. And then basically at the same time, then these 2 groups are going to go on to Unit 2. And that is just a little bit about mastery learning. It's a quick review, and I hope it's going to spark some good discussion.